Okay, so like but living in the operation right now at for like this mysterious building or like kind of like the mountainous region of like the land of Ghana, which like having like a huge store. Like I'm considering that location would be I'm considering would be like the first location in which like the road point would be and that says location would be like the first location which like where like I'm considering Portuguese Sudiaki, like the father of Oden Portuguese Sudiaki might have uh gone hiding precisely once like because of like he used to feels like unprovoked, like the film of the release unprovoked, like villain like, order again to like basically wipe out like the entirety of like the Kurosumi clan, and just for like possibly it would be solely due to like just the villainous act of like by like just the minority of like the of the people of the Kurosumi clan. Just for that, I'm also bringing like the Portuguese Ojari might have ordered like the given such a villanistic order to like the Portuguese samurais to basically exterminate like the entirety of like the Portuguese clan and their offspring and everything. So like that might have been when like Orochi might have like in like the past before becoming like the chosen of the clan and the Fana might have struggled to survive and all that. So like and so like that eventually resulting in like that cause and that reason to like get revenge on like the Portuguese clan being formed within like Orochi and hence like the Portuguese the people of like the Kawasaki having to like endure all the suffering. Uh, People of the Kawasaki and like their offerings all like basically being forced to like endure like the extreme sufferings for like the past 20 years by Orochi. So like since like and I'm differing like so like it all happening precisely due to that villanistic order given by that Kotsuki Sugiyaki, that unprovoked like villanistic order given by Kotsuki Sugiyaki will like wipe out like the entirety of like the innocent Kurosumi clan, while like Orochi was only retaliating against that and getting revenge for exactly that. So like I'm also bringing since like Kotsuki Sugiyaki just now has recently been revealed to be like extremely afraid of like facing like the remaining survivors of like the Kotsuki clan, like the remaining survivors of like the Kotsuki clan who survived like the entire suffering of like the 20 years and their offspring. Like basically, definitely my personal impression that like as for like how exactly when Orochi my ended up like his like villain stick role 20 years back in like the land of Wano. At that point, as to like how exactly Kotsuki Sugiyaki might have selfishly saved himself and I'm also stitching to my best impression that like for like the majority of like the past 20 years while like the uh, Kotsuki everyone in all of the Kotsuki people in like the land of Wano were undergoing that extreme suffering for like the past 20 years. Like for like the majority of that past 20 years, I'm delivering Portuguese. Sugiyagi might have been selfishly hiding himself in this like precise Ponyville location, road Ponyville location, certainly my reservation. And he might have also secretly stored food there as well. And I'm also bringing up as like how he alone might have totally precisely escaped when like Orochi started his like Shogun rule and started his like villains. So at that point, as like how exactly also Sugiyagi might have escaped will be precisely through Ambassador, there might definitely exist like a basement, like a secret basement like location within a passageway like location on like the basement of like the palace or a sea. It's definitely my personal impression. So like through that basement passageway, like I'm different that passageway might connect to this precise or on location. That's definitely my personal. So like through that passageway, like in the precise moment or he might have started with like villainism and might have started like making like the innocent people of like the possibly suffer when all that chaos had just began itself at that point itself I'm preparing like what possibly Sugiyagi might have done might have been like he might have selfishly decided to like save himself and he might have escaped through like the passageway and since then might have been like that passageway might have led to like the road Poneglyphs location and he might have been secretly hiding there for like the majority of like the past 20 years of suffering of like the Kosei clan is definitely my consideration. So considering with that Kosei Sugiyagi recently even seen talking to Moment of Care, I think in like Moment of Care that Sovereign Palace, like I was different even after that interaction, I was different Kosuke Sugiyagi, who might have been still might have been like extremely afraid and might have wanted to like instead of like at least like repent instead of like Kosuke Sugiyagi might have still thought of like selfishly uh, hiding himself from like the public, like from like the positive people, rather than facing like the positive people and at least apologizing for his like and basically confessing that like him being like the reason for like the entirety of like sufferings of like the social clans for like the past 20 years. Like instead of like coming out to the public and confessing about his like mistakes, grave mistakes, he might have like he might have still decided to like prioritize his own simply prioritize his own safety, and he might have still after talking to like Momonosuke, confronting Momonosuke and like the and like Momonosuke to like return like after that like he might have still secretly might have gone through like the passageway and still might be hiding in that precise road corner location. Even right now, it's definitely my personal remember. So like right now with like this like in this like mysterious building with like the huge door like right in front of it like Luffy along with like a great number of like positive people like being present in front of that building would be precisely Amber different would be precisely moment of care wanting this like grandpa Kokichi Sukiyaki for like the entirety of like the people of like the land of Anno who went through 20 years of anger of who went through 20 years of suffering solely due to Kokichi Sukiyaki for all of them to still forgive Kokichi Sukiyaki might be what Momonosuke want. So like Momonosuke Amber different right now would be trying to like use his position as like the shogun and trying to use it for a position as like Oden's son. And since like right now the Kosugi people right now have that absolute love towards Oden, like right now Momonosuke would be like right now trying to take advantage of all that and basically trying to do his absolute best to like make like the Kosugi people like forgive Kosugi Sukiyaki even after like the extreme suffering that Portuguese Gandhi had caused to like the poor and innocent people of like the Kosi people of like the land of Pino and their offspring and temples. To bring that maybe within that past years, like all these poor Portuguese people who had gone through all those suffering, like might have totally lost their precious beloved ones within like the 20 years and their offspring within like the 20 years. So like even after all this, like all that happening to them and then undergoing all that suffering while possibly Sutiagi selfishly, my personal remembrance is that he might have definitely selfishly save, ensured his safety and hidden in like that precise road conflict location for like the majority of like the past 20 years. And hence, in being able to like survive even to the present without having like almost any injury or like serious health issues at all, when compared to like the remaining possibly survivors after like their the state in which their health and their injuries and everything are after like different years, then comparing them to like basically Kosuke Sukiyaki, the fact that Kosuke Sukiyaki is in like a way better healthy state will be precisely because of him most likely even having strategically stored a lot of food as well, food supplies and everything in that precise road spawning of location. Even before, way beforehand, in case of like such an emergency situation for him to like selfishly save him, especially when the so like even after all this like I'm considering Momonosuke right now might be like desperately wanting for like the Koshiki people to like for still forgive Koshiki Sukiyaki. So like right now I'm preferring Momonosuke to like most likely right now take advantage of like his position as like the shogun as well as like him being like the son of Oden, like using all that emotions that like the poor and innocent people, Kosugi people have towards and love that Kosugi people have towards Momonosuke to like use all that emotion to basically kind of in a way like manipulate or like force them to like forgive Kosugi Sukiyaki would be like the precise reason for like Momonosuke right now might have precisely given the orders to like the Kosugi people to like gather up in front of that precise mysterious building with like the huge door where like still Kosugi Sukiyaki will be hiding. Definitely my preference is like I'm considering Momonosuke might have also told like Luffy as well to like show up there in front of that building. So like I'm considering right now I'm considering without much delay like I'm considering like Momonosuke showing up to that precise location and for like I'm considering Momonosuke would be like would be right now present within that building. And I'm considering like Momonosuke right now. That huge door right now is trying to be opened right now. And I'm considering like Momonosuke definitely deciding to like open that door and like be present beside Kosuke Sukiyaki so that like the so that like the Kosuke people won't be like extremely so that like the Kosuke the possibility of like the Kosuke people like basically being able to like contain their anger towards like Kosuke Sukiyaki and possibly not taking the life of like Kosuke Sukiyaki in like retaliation. would be like the possibility of such a scenario happening in order to like greatly reduce that like and possibly like Momonosuke would be hoping that basically since like Momonosuke is like the shogun and since Momonosuke is like the son of Oden like with like Momonosuke standing beside Kosuke Sukiyaki right beside Kosuke Sukiyaki even if like any of like the poor Kosuke people tries to attack Kosuke Sukiyaki like Momonosuke will be able to like stop them so that so his like dragon powers as well as through that action will be along the lines Momonosuke would be thinking. So like I'm delivering right now, this would be exactly what Momonosuke would be attempting for. And I'm going to bring that to like totally succeed. And I'm going to bring like the poor, extremely poor innocent people, positive people, I'm going to bring them to like solely due to like Momonosuke, solely due to their love towards foreign and solely due to the fact that like Momonosuke is like foreign son. And hence like there was a way to possibly definitely having like that extreme love towards like Momonosuke those different things like them totally finally deciding to like forgive Kosuke Sukiyaki. And with that, I'm also bringing Kosuke Sukiyaki, the extremely selfish Kosuke Sukiyaki. I'm also bringing Kosuke Sukiyaki like an extremely selfish character. And I'm also bringing that extremely selfish Kosuke Sukiyaki. I'm considering from this day on would be able to like walk amongst like the public without having like the public try to like attack him or take it like was like the major scenario that I'm discussing right now and not very much. Okay, so like but limit of the restriction right now is just like the location right now where Luffy and like the Rosita Road are in like being like the location of Oden Castle where Oden Castle has the like of stable states and also that mysterious building with like a giant door would be like tall door would be like inside above the pyramid would be like most likely what's left and remaining of like the Oden Castle have like kind of like class of destroyed. It's definitely my impression of that will be what's remaining of Exodus Castle. And I'm considering right now I'm considering the type of reason as for like Luffy as well as like those great number of people have being like gathered in that location. Maybe precisely due to like since like their great hero Oden's like grave was destroyed along with like the Oden Castle during that kind of like last I'm considering like precisely because of that I'm considering like they would be like they might have created like another gravestone and I'm about to bring like they might be right now I'm going to bring that all of them would be gathered to like basically for like the reinstallation of like the gravestone of like Odin, not only Odin, and I'm going to bring this time it will be not only the gravestone of Odin alone, but like it will be the gravestone of like Odin and Ashura Doji, Ashura who basically died in the war as well as like of Iso as well who died in the war like since like Ashura and Iso were like a retainers of Odin. And I'm going to bring in the case of Kanjuro, I'm considering like I'm considering that's like the scenario right now that will happen. Like Luffy as well as all of them like totally right now witnessing as like basically first I'm considering like modern gravestone being like thrust onto like the ground and then I'm considering placed onto the ground and thrust onto the ground and then I'm considering it will be like Achura Doji's gravestone and then decided it will be like Iso's gravestone and like with that, like I'm different, they will be like moving away. Like the people installing the gravestones will be like walking away from them. So like at that point, I'm different. Maybe like one of like the retainers, so the all of the retainers like having that moment of silence where like it will be like a disturbed moment of silence because like all of the retainers of Odin at that point would be like totally right now thinking of the size person's Kanjuro because like if they would always think that if Kanjuro hadn't eventually betrayed them and basically hadn't betrayed them, like then Kanjuro's gravestone should also have been right now will get beside or like gravestone for like I'm considering there will be like that brief moment of like a disturbance between them and I'm considering Luffy. I'm considering just like Luffy's person like I'm considering right then I'm considering Luffy totally telling them about like uh, where's like Kanjuro's like graceful. So like by now Luffy would be well and fully aware that about everything connecting to like Kanjuro. About like Kanjuro having died in like the war as well as like Kanjuro like totally like betraying them and all that. Like I'm considering by now like Luffy would be well and fully aware. So like Luffy at that point like straight away like out of the blue like Luffy at that point is like straight away would be asking like asking the retainers as to like where is like Kanjuro gravestone. So like at that point, I was bring like Kinemon totally telling Luffy that basically, but Kanjuro has betrayed Oden-sama and like everything and like the land of mana and everything along the lines would be along the line was bring Kinemon telling Luffy at that point. So like a Kanjuro like gravestone is not supposed to doesn't deserve to be like placed along the lines what doesn't deserve to be placed along beside Oden Sama and Oden Sama's like gravestone be along the lines and the Kinemon getting located. And at that point I was wondering that the one of the that like Luffy by now might have somehow learned of like the fact that basically through someone like someone might have told Luffy like I'm wondering maybe Robin might have learned of like the actual history of like how like actually uh how exactly like Orochi ended up being like the Shogun and how what was like the driving force behind like Orochi. So having that extreme dislike towards like the Kosuke clan, like not only Orochi but also Kanjuro having solely due to them belong to like the Torotsumi clan, like as to like why exactly them specifically the common factor between Orochi and Kanjuro being that like them belong to like the Torotsumi clan. Yet like and specifically by like this they had that extreme dislike and caused that extreme suffering like especially already like causing for 20 years like causing that extreme suffering for like the innocent Kosi clan like as to like why exactly the reason for that was like I'm bring like someone might have told Luffy by now and Luffy might have learned of it by now so maybe most likely through Robin like Robin might have told Luffy and informed Luffy that basically Orochi's villains and for like certain years was basically for just retaliation and it was basically like Orochi retaliating for like what uh, Oden's father Sukiyaki did to like the poor and innocent Kurosune clan and their offspring just due to like the villain acts of wrong acts of like just the minority of the Kurosune clan. So it might be something like especially since like Robin has recently even interacted with Kosuke again. So Robin might have revealed this to like Luffy. It's definitely my book. So like right now, the when Kinemon, Kinemon select only tell Luffy that basically no Kanjuro of the gravestone can't be placed beside like Oden Sama's like someone has great as Oden Sama, especially with Kanjuro having betrayed the Kozuki clan and everything. Like Oden Sama and the Kozuki clan and all that would be the excuse that Kinemon will be saying. So like at that point I was to bring Luffy straight away telling Kinemon that basically so what about like Oden's father? I was the right then, Luffy telling Kinemon that basically, like, what Kanjuro as well as like Orochi did were like only a retaliation to the extreme villainism done by Oden's father, like extreme unprovoked villainism done by Oden's father, would be along the lines like Luffy would be like straight away saying that at the point of a reason and I'm about to bring at that point I'm about to bring definitely Kinemon and all the retainers and everyone present there like being that totally and absolutely speechless and not being having any point to like basically respond back towards Luffy for that argument of Luffy. It's definitely not consideration and I'm about to bring them all that accepting that basically that the fact that basically Kosuke Sukiyaki, even though he was like Oden's father, he was like an extreme villain who who basically caused all that suffering to took the life of and wiped out the almost like the entirety of like the poor and innocent Kurosumi clans. And basically them accepting Kosuke Sukiyaki as a villain who was like the actual reason for like the 20 years suffering of like the Kosuke clan. And basically with that I'm also bring none of them being able to like argue Luffy back with that single point of Luffy and I'm also bring them right now I'm going to bring them like totally installing Kanjuro's gravestone as well, like right beside Oden's gravestone. And uh, so like right now I'm going to bring so like through that scenario I'm going to bring for like Kosuke Sukiyaki not being at all able to like walk about among like the public and I'm going to bring Kosuke Sukiyaki that's still an extremely scared Kosuke Sukiyaki is still living in, like remaining hiding from like the public remaining in that precise location within like either I'm considering since like I'm considering there will be like some sort of a passageway secret passageway between from the palace of where Momonosuke cave would be like ruling right now but the palace of Shogun to like the location of like the road point there will be some sort of like a underground basement like secret passageway so like I'm considering solely due to that I'm considering Kosuke Sukiyaki wouldn't be like even willing to like basically spend his remaining life without much luxury in that precise road chronicle location. But like I'm considering positive again deciding to like basically live his like a remaining life in that absolute luxury while within like the palace of like the Shogun where like moment of skill you're proving like within that palace and considering Kisugiaki spending his like a remaining life in that absolute luxury and comfort. It's like the scenario that I'm delivering. Yet, like I'm delivering, Kosugi Sukiyaki would never be able to like step out of that palace of the shogun because like the moment because like he will be fearing like if like he even steps out of like the palace and if anyone even if like anyone even recognizes him then at that moment is that like they will be taking like the gear along the lines of that fear that Kosugi Sukiyaki will be having or like the other thing that I'm delivering like Kosugi Sukiyaki still being able to like step out of like the orange step out of like the castle of moment of case only due to like Portuguese Sukiyaki having this like map. So like as usual, I'm talking the way Portuguese Sukiyaki had basically stepped out and walked around amongst the public casually while wearing his like mask and also bringing a similar pattern like I'm also bringing Portuguese Sukiyaki simultaneously being able to like enjoy like the comfort like the palace of like the Shogun monastic would be operating while at the same time him be for the remaining of his life in like also being able to like walk among like the public while wearing that absolute mask of fame is definitely my very interesting. So like basically my secondary impressions are like that way solely due to like Luffy's questioning to which like neither moment of care nor like the return thinking have like any answer to like basically or like any argument to tell back. And that's bring solely due to that like I was bring them shortly installing like Tanjiro's gravestone right beside Jack Gordon's gravestone. And right then I was bring Luffy all of a sudden realizing and question giving asking like the next question to like Momonosuke as well as like the retainers and Cinnamon. That is where exactly is that Portuguese Sukiyaki like gravestone. So that would be like the ultimate question that like Oden's father's like gravestone, like where exactly why is it not present there like next to like Oden's gravestone, like where exactly is like that would be like the first question, like the two of us, where exactly is like Oden's father's like gravestone, like why is it not present next to like Oden's gravestone? So like at that point, I'm just certainly putting like the moment those three would be asking this question about the friends straight away, like moment of as well as the remaining retainers, like he's sweating at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm about to bring. And even like the entire crowd that have gathered there will be like seriously confused as well. And so we think that like what Luffy is asking is like potentially right. Uh with like 20 years having passed and Kosuke Sukiyaki already even before 20 years being like kind of like seriously aged and basically on top of that like with, all of the like all of these like in foreign innocent society people like have gone through that such extreme extreme suffering of like a role under like authority and still like with them all of them with like all those like remaining Kosuke survivors like Kosuke people having lost a lot of their precious and beloved ones and their options and yet like for like why so like even after that why haven't like why isn't there like Kosuke Sukiyaki like gravestone present next to like modern gravestone would be what they would be like genuinely at that point would be like to extend country in a confused manner within it. So like at that point I was different because and it's only because like neither Luffy nor any of them not realizing that basically the fact that Kosuke Sukiyaki is like even way more health would be definitely my consideration would be way more even healthier than like the remaining Kosuke survivors in like the present. Even though Kosuke Sukiyaki will be extremely aged. It's definitely my consideration solely due to like and about that being like and about it could be because of like and the confusion would be because of like neither of like those gay crowd or like Luffy being like being aware of like that extreme selfish nature of like Kosuke Sukiyaki with which like he would have definitely like for like the majority of in the past 20 years, while all the remaining Kosuke people were like going through that extreme struggle and suffering under like authorities role, like himself, like selfishly, like prioritizing his safety and totally like basically living in comfort, like within that precise bonding location, like basically and like even walking amongst them with like while wearing like the mask on his face and basically all that like the fact that Kosuke Sukiyaki was doing this entire time and solely that way being like the sole reason for like Portuguese Sukiage alone, not only being able to like survive even to the present, but like also being definitely I'm considering would be in like a way better, healthier state when compared to like the remaining Portuguese survivors to endure like the 20 years of suffering and what was this ago. Definitely my considering better. So like I'm considering solely due to like them not like neither like the crowd, opposing crowd nor Lucy being not aware of that. Like I'm considering them all would be like only singing along the lines that basically like Portuguese Sukiaki as well might have totally died while protesting against like Orochi, just like the remaining retainers and Oden and all of them basically. So precisely because of this reason, I was different. They would be like totally confused as to, like why exactly like Kosuchi Suryagi is like Greystone is not present next to Oden's Greystone. So like right now I was different like and right now there's only bring like the retainers as well as moment of getting extremely disturbed and basically them having like a moment of silence and basically them with their head down and the thing like basically Kinemon telling like the entire like the crowd and you see that basically no, we have decided not to like install like the gravestone of like the Suzuki solely because of like basically what Luffy said that basically that Suzuki doesn't Suzuki like gravestone doesn't deserve to be present beside someone as great as or like a retainer. So like we have decided since like it was Suzuki that had basically started it all this like 20-year suffering for like for the plan. So like I'm suffering since he's like Caruso, Santos, different Kinemon and Kinemon saying along such lines that basically like we have decided that Sukiyaki is like Raystone is not worthy or like deserving to like be placed right next to Conan. And that way like I'm delivering like in a shameful manner like I'm delivering Kinemon. Like and all the retainers as well as the moment of at that point will be saying will be having their heads bowed down head down while like Pinamont will be like saying this like this head down and they would all be feeling that uh, shame of like the fact that even right now that Kosuke Sugiaki is like alive and well that basically the fact that like basically and from this point on like they would have to like even protect someone like Kosuke Sugiaki to cause all the who's like that to the reason for like all the 20 years suffering of like the land of planet and all that like basically like with that, like I'm totally bring like Kinemon totally lying to like Luffy and the crowd and that way protecting like Kosuke Sugiyaki once again, which is like the scenario that I'm totally bring and my working friends. And that way like I'm totally bring eventually once like in the distant future Kosuke Sugiyaki would be dying like definitely would be actually dying like even then I'm totally bring like Kosuke Sugiyaki's like Greystone won't be getting installed beside like Oden and like with a retainer like Greystone. Even while Kanjur of Greystone would be like installed beside like Oden's Greystone and the different still Portuguese Sugiaki is like being Oden's father like still Portuguese Sugiaki is like Greystone. Due to the things like Portuguese Sugiaki did like this Greystone and not being present beside like Oden and just like a return of Greystone is like given the scenario that I'm going of the thing and my reaction. Okay, so like a correction because like my theory and prediction that I've just made right now were all based on me thinking that that is really that giant kind of like circular area like behind where like Luffy is right now standing in. Like basically like while it was actually a massive hole, like it's being represented through like a dark circular area from a distance, like me thinking that is like a huge crowd of like Portuguese people gathered behind Luffy and since like the location as well where Luffy is right now standing in it's like basically the location where like uh Orange Castle used to be like so and my theory that is made right now being like the way it is still it could be seen as like a what is scenario my theory and prediction that is now cannot be seen as like the what is scenario so like that's all I have to say. Okay, so like definitely my secondary impression right now as for like Tanjiro's dialogue right now that like the Oden had basically tasted better after like training with like Oden. Like about the bring that would be only something like about the bring would be in actuality might not be true. Certainly was the impression like it is just only due to like Tanjiro as well as the return of extreme love and affection and obsession towards like Oden that about the them totally naively would be assuming that Oden had trained them. It's definitely not those in actuality, my preparation were like modern might have definitely not at all trained any of like the retainers at all. Especially my preparation. My the precise reason being like my preparation is that like the specific is like even in like the present it's like basically revealed that basically none of like the retainers of like the power of the review Especially since like even in like the very recent fight against like even like Rocky that none of like the retainers nor Momonosuke could even use like the power of the at all. Like I'm also bring definitely even though like that was the case for like the retainers, I'm also bring in the case of Oden, like even from like the simple example, like Oden might have either learned Ryu like the technique, the haki equivalent of like the land of an Ryu, like that power, like I'm considering Oden might have really learned it either during like Oden's childhood or by himself, or like I'm considering it back when Oden was a child, he might have uh, been taught Ryu under like the guidance of like Yogoro, definitely might have been impression. So like this might have been what might have definitely happened with like Oden, and that being like the sole reason for Oden even being able to like wield Enma would be precisely because of like definitely might have been able to that like without Haki even wielding Enma would be like totally and absolutely extremely totally impossible. It's definitely might have been that, especially with like Zoro with like Zoro's levels of Haki level, like Zoro having to like struggle a lot to like handle the Enma that since like Oden was able to like so easily handle Enma when while fighting out against like Kaido and all that like especially because of this reason like Oden might have definitely might have been well trained in like Rio. Yet like I'm considering for like Oden to like basically travel along with like his retainers and spend so much time with his retainers and yet for like none of like Oden's retainers to like not possess not even a single one of like Oden's retainers to possess like none of them to like possess like the power of Rio would be precisely because of like Oden having not at all like trained with like retainers at all in like combat ever. It's definitely my personal reaction. That's the possibility that I'm going to protect. I'm a the reaction. So and hence none of like the retainers doesn't even have like the power of use. It's definitely my personal reaction. So like I'm considering the retain like what might have been like while Odin was traveling with like a retainers like what might have been always happening might have been like Odin might have found time often to like basically train by himself. So like I'm considering like since like the retainers would be like would each one of them would are so extremely obsessed with like sport and I'm considering what they might have been doing would be like while Oden would be trying all by himself and doing his own thing. I'm considering they would all be like following Oden around every time and they would be like only trying to like imitate and mimic and try to copy and that way learn Oden's techniques. While they would be like just watching the way Oden would be training and would be doing the very same exact thing because of their extreme obsession with like Oden. They would be trying to like copy Oden and would be trying to do the very exact same thing. And that way feeling as if like they have gotten stronger by copying like the very exact thing that Oden was doing. But yet like I'm also different. That obviously ending up being like a failure with like the retainers even to the present day not being able to like even have any access to like the power of it's definitely my personal rainbow. Because definitely because of this reason, it's definitely my personal rainbow. So like I'm considering like even back then when Autumn might have definitely possessed like the power for you. Still Autumn might have refused, might have not even and I'm considering like none of like the retainers of Autumn like even to the present day would be even aware of like power as a view even existing. It's definitely my personal and this would all be because of like Autumn keeping like the information of like the Ryu and all that like about like the power of Ryu and all that vault to himself and Autumn never even having bothered to like ever even train any of his like retainers might have been what might have actually uh, might have happened in actuality in like the past was definitely while Gordon was alive was definitely my person to reaction. My first reaction is that Gordon might have definitely might have never even trained like any of his retainers at all. It's definitely one of the reaction. So like the retainers solely due to like their extreme obsession towards like foreign being like naively like kind of like in a delusional manner would be like naively thinking along the lines that like Gordon had actually trained them and got them stronger and everything. But like I'm considering like the evidence would be like precisely in the fact that none of like the retainers have access to like the power of view, even to like the present day even after like the entirety of like the war in like the Wano is over and still even to the present day while fighting against Orochimaru, the fact that none of them were able to like use the power of Ryu would be like precisely because of like Oden never having like given any sort of training at all to like any of his retainers. It definitely might person consideration function of like the propaganda and of what might have happened in like the past in actuality is definitely not the reimbursement. Also, like my secondary impression of dog, like you can still had through trying to like stealthily leave like the land of Wano without letting Momonosuke know find out about it. Like I'm considering it to be protected because of like right now with like Momonosuke's current position as like on top of like the entire of the land of Wano, knowing that recognizing Momonosuke right now not only as like Oden's son but Oden's son but also as like the shogun, the ruler of like the land of Wano. So different since like Momonosuke right now is like in like the such an important figure like definitely Momonosuke even like going out to like the beach side to like basically like say with like goodbye to like Luffy and the Straw Hat. So like at that point I was wondering like if such a scenario situation even happens, like Luffy would be like easily foresee that basically if such a situation will be happening, like Momonosuke would be definitely thanking Luffy and the Straw Hat to a lot before they would be like sailing away on in the South Sunday. So like basically since like Momonosuke is right now such an important figure, like definitely Momonosuke will like show up all the way to like that beach area and basically like thank Luffy and so have so definitely since like Momonosuke right now is like such a shogun and such an important figure to like the land of Wano. Momonosuke will be definitely attracting a crowd and attention. So like basically that way like since like my brother Emerson said like since like right now I think like basically like then that reflects the land of Wano would be totally naively assuming that basically like it was Momonosuke that basically had saved like the land of Wano and freed like the land of Wano from Kaido as well as like Orochi for them to like not have their impression about like huge impression and for like the majority of like the people of like the land of Manu to like thought have their impression that they would be currently having about Momonosuke that Momonosuke is like has like interested that exceptional strength of like Oden and basically would be like that absolute perfecter not just in terms of taking decisions but also in terms of like fighting skills and strength. Like basically for that false impression that like basically like the people of like the land of majority of the people of like the land of Manu would be having right now for that impression and that hope, that confidence and that lack of fear that the majority of the people would be having right now. So only due to like them probably believing that moment of is like the greatest right now. And the strongest in like the land of China and save like the land of China from Kaido and Orochi. So like for that false for all that false beliefs that like the majority of the people of the land of China to not get shattered if they witness an attack on Momonosuke thanking Luffy for like saving like the land of Wano while Luffy will be leaving, then all that false beliefs of like the majority of the people of the land of Wano will be getting shattered. So like in order to prevent that from happening would be like exercise and cooperation for even Luffy being a platform to such a situation happening and so like would be like the preparation for like Luffy like keep trying to keep his like uh, this like and he's like so had virus like basically leaving like the land of Mano like a seeker like himself trying to like stealthily leave the land of Mano before like Momonosuke without Momonosuke being able to like, find out like would be that stealth element being present in like the farewell of like Luffy and the Sword Hat so that Luffy is like right now attempting and the Sword Hat Rose right now attempting uh connecting to like Momonosuke will be precisely due to like this reason which definitely my personal interest. And so like I'm considering it precisely because of the situation I'm considering like after like Luffy and like the Sonic to be like finally setting sail from like the land of Wano to that person's only at that point I'm considering Sanji like quickly with like the even though like they might not have like the exact ingredients of, for like exact and precise ingredients to like make for an ample different skill Sanji with his like exceptional cooking skills like I'm considering Sanji still with like the with the current ingredients at that point that they would be having in their thousands only. Like even with that, like I'm also bring Sanjay somehow this is like exceptional cooking skills like cooking up like cooking like an order to like the scenario that I'm considering and I'm considering like coincidentally like and I'm considering at that point like Luffy and Yamato and like the entire Zoro has crew like basically having Oden in remembrance of Oden like them having Oden together in like the thousands on years they would be sailing away. It's like the scenario that I'm considering. And I'm considering it's like a fixed scenario in which like simultaneously like still coincidentally simultaneously during that exact same time I was considering like Momonosuke as well as the retainers like sitting together and having Oden at the same time in like the land of Wano as well simultaneously and coincidentally at the very same time and them as well like both of them like basically simultaneously like and coincidentally like remembering Oden and basically having that Oden state in remembrance of Oden. Oden is like the even the scenario that I'm talking about like and also very impression. So like the cleaner is very impression for like the eventual scenario to be like the majority of like the people of like the land of Anna falsely feeling safe under like the ruling of like Momonosuke as like the slogan that basically the slogan Momonosuke like the majority of the land of Anna falsely thinking along the lines that like the slogan Momonosuke was like so absolutely strong that he would defeat that Kaido as well as Orochi. So basically with like Shogun Momono as long as Shogun Momono we are under like the rule of like the Shogun Momonosuke like the land of Anna will be absolutely safe and remain protected well protected While Amber supporting Luffy, on the other hand, Amber supporting would be to ensure absolutely no one even dares to infiltrate into the land of Wano and cause trouble for the people of the land of Wano, especially with the team we well fully aware that this leads that and I'm going to bring even when Shank had stopped out of view, I'm going to bring Luffy might have been precisely able to sense that I'm going to bring maybe Luffy might have been even been able to sense that it was Shank. Definitely my good friend. Luffy and the Rocket Crew will be well and fully aware that no one of this thing it's really weak in terms of fighting scenes and strength. So still to make up for that extreme lack in strength and fighting skills of not only Momonosuke but the retainers of Oden as well even to the present day the fact that they are so extremely weak and won't have the strength to protect the land of Wano. Even though the borders of the land of Wano is not open still exactly how Luffy had made to the land of Wano and exactly how Kaido had made it to the land of Wano basically eventually it's the possibility of any future pirates basically infiltrating into the land of Wano and that if such a scenario happens the possibility of that pirates and his small pirate crew possibly being easily able to bring down Momonosuke and defeat the Momonosuke and the retainers and take over the land of Wano. Luffy and Both Shipping would be seeing that as a serious possibility which eventually is definitely not good payment. So I'm both shipping for Luffy to play his own game, and I was bring that to be precisely to ensure the protection of the land. And I'm considering Luffy making complete to my personal conditions that after leaving the land of I'm considering Luffy making some sort this ultimate declaration of Luffy using his position as the emperor of the sea to basically make that absolute declaration that not only the Fishman Island, but also the land of Wano is under Luffy's territory. Such a declaration and the different Luffy making it to the outside world and Luffy somehow getting that information to into the newspaper somehow. And I'm also maybe Luffy and the Fire Crew at some point, maybe the still maybe even running into Morgan. So maybe through Morgan's maybe Luffy being able to get that into the newspaper basically. Or Luffy might just during I'm talking about somehow that news about Luffy having declared the Fishman Island that was left the land of an office Luffy's discovery that eventually spreading across the world through the news is the scenario that I'm delivering and through that solely due to that declaration of Luffy alone I'm delivering the land of an which is ruled over by Momonosuke who doesn't have access to real power nor his retainers as well, who doesn't still to the person there doesn't even have access to real power, still being able to remaining protected, the land of Minus still remaining protected solely due to Lucy and not due to neither Momonosuke nor his retainers the eventual scenario that embassy role for and especially because of Lucy's title as it's emperor of Lucy and the news about Lucy defeating Kaido and would be also spreading out the world. So definitely pirates would be intimidated by Luffy's declaration that of that basically the land of Wano is that eventually Luffy would be making that the land of Wano is Luffy's country. So precisely probably due to that alone reason I don't have to bring pirates not it does not from this point on after the Sonic would be leaving the land of Wano still and also bring no pirates even daring to basically infiltrate into trying to attempting to infiltrate into the land of Fano or attack the land of Fano in the future. It's the eventual scenario that I'm talking about and my personal reaction. Okay, so definitely my personal reaction that I'm still thinking about this basically that the past away people Shimotsuki Kosaburo would definitely be first of all I'm also bring would be definitely be Zoro's grandfather would be definitely Shimotsuki Kosaburo and so Zoro looked Shimotsuki Tsuchimaru would definitely be Zoro's father and reflect him to having died. I'm considering Zoro's actual name would be back when Zoro was a baby and considering Zoro might have been been transported from being not transported but might have been totally taken from the land of Wano and might have ended up Shimotsuki Kosaburo and Shimotsuki Kosaburo might have been sacrificed so that might have totally brought Zoro. There might have been some war that going on in the land of Wano. So at that point I'm not referring to Shimotsuki Uchimaru might have assigned Zoro's protection and safety. So maybe Zoro's protection and safety to Shimotsuki Kosaburo. So Shimotsuki Kosaburo might have carried the baby Zoro and sailed away from the land of Wano. and ended up in like the village where like Zoro's village where like since like Zoro could like remember like where Zoro trained in the dojo and everything like that village. I think its name is like Shimotsugi. So like it might be probably Shimotsugi Kosaburo that might have named that village Shimotsugi. But name I couldn't remember. Like the different like Zoro's actual name might even be like Shimotsuki Zoro would be like Zoro's actual name. It's also like name and family. So like I'm considering all this like 25% like all this is what I'm considering and I'm considering all this for Zoro to like only find out not now but only in like the distant future. I'm considering right now Zoro without this great delay like leaving with like Luffy and the other like spoiled parents and then sailing away from like the latter and only it's only unconsidering in being in like the very distant future that I'm considering Zoro finally shockingly realizing this or just definitely like living scenario that I'm considering and this is very interesting. Once I might have really interesting is definitely that like Zoro's mother might have definitely died in that first war that might have been slightly the reason for like Zoro the Shimosuke Shimaru like to be like Zoro's father like assigning Zoro's protection and safety with like Shimosuke Kotatro and Shimosuke Kotatro even leaving like the latter man and settling in like the village of like Shimosuke in like these would be precisely due to like the result of like this war. And then was bring like Zoro's mother might have died in this war in like the land of Mano that might have been taking place back then. And able to bring that might have been like the point when like Shimaru being Zoro's father might have been like extremely worried for like Zoro's safety at that point. So that he might not only at that point might have been when after like Zoro's mother might have died in that war might have been like this point when like Shimaru might have felt that there's like no other choice to like basically ensure Zoro's safety and he might have assigned Zoro 50 to like Shimotsuki Kosaburo, and that might be like how Shimotsuki Kosaburo ended up, along with like Zoro as well, ending up in like the village of Shimotsuki, uh, um, in like the school. Might have been how it might have happened. It's definitely my dream. Also, like my the impression as well, like the first possible racing for like Zoro growing up in like the village of Shimotsuki in like the East Loop, while according to my personal impression, like Shimotsuki Kosaburo while being right there, like this might have definitely been like actually like Zoro's grandpa. Yet like for Shimosuke Kotaburo not revealing that to like Zoro and considering that might be precisely due to like even while it might have definitely been like Shimosuke Kotaburo himself that might have named like the village in like the East Coast as like by the name Shimosuke. Yet like I'm considering him I think like was like afraid of like the Navy. So like I'm considering Shimosuke Kotaburo might have been afraid of like the eventual future possibility of like the Navy finding tracking him down and capturing him. Definitely went on benefit. So like definitely the Navy might have been like actually looking for Shimotsuki Kasaburo back then. It's definitely my position. And but the Navy might have been like the war that might have forced like Shimotsuki Kasaburo to like escape like the land of Wano. Just like Zoro might have been also maybe like a war that might have been initiated by like or like it might have been like a navy attack back then on like the land of Ano in during that part might have been also like possibly like the reason which might have resulted in like Timothy was after escaping from like the land of Wano with like Zoro. It's also like an event of reference. So like I'm considering it when definitely like Timothy was while being presented like the East Blue might have definitely had that fear of like the Navy eventually possibly finding him and capturing him. And if he were to be captured, then like Timon Rico Sabaro might have probably thought that if the Navy captured like Timon Rico Sabaro, then the flight would be taken by the Navy. Might have been like he might be getting executed by the Navy. Might be along the lines like Timon Rico Sabaro might have thought. So like I'm considering this might be the first reason for like Shimoto Rico Saburo not telling Zoro as for like Shimoto Rico Saburo being his grandpa. So that like that connection that basically between like Zoro connection relations between like Zoro and Saburo would remain hidden that way. Like even if like the Navy eventually catches Kosaburo and takes away Kosaburo and even execute Kosaburo, just so that like Zoro would still be safe in like the village of Timothy in like the East Mid. So like to save Zoro might be like there's a reason for like unconsidering Shimotsuri Kosaburo might have not revealed to like not revealing to Zoro that like Shimotsuri Kosaburo is like in fact Zoro's grandfather and about like Shimotsuri's father about like Zoro's father like Shimotsuri Zoro's like actual home being in like the land of Wano and that basically Zoro's like father is like Shimotsuri Uchimaru and he's like in like the land of Wano like basically this is my particular impression. The reason for like Simon to give Shimaru like keeping all this information a secret from Zoro is especially for like Zoro's own safety. That's also definitely my particular impression. Okay, so like definitely my particular impression right now with like Zoro about to leave the land of Wano and basically Hiyori right now telling Zoro like like how she will be like missing, how much she will be missing her father's soul like and like yet for Doro to tell here the way that basically you can't have like Enma like I'm going to think like that would definitely be I'm going to bring like if Doro hadn't met Luffy then I'm going to bring like in such a situation I'm going to bring definitely since like Doro deep down then definitely will be having that genuine like love and affection towards like Hiyori and when Doro might have given up on his like Enma and might have totally given his like Enma to like Hiyori might have been willing to like actually give us this like enmad to like Yori in the current situation. Definitely my brother said Zoro might have that mindset in like the current situation. If Zoro had met Luffy, definitely my brother. If Zoro's only goal was just his own goal alone to become like the greatest swordsman like the world, definitely my brother. But like right now, ever since like meeting Luffy, like and eventually for like Zoro to like embrace like Luffy's goal as his goal, that really even as like Luffy's goal to become like the king of the fire being more important than like Zoro's own goal. So sadly, from that point on, I'm going to bring especially with like Zoro in like the past, and I'm going to bring his it might have definitely been from that point on that like Zoro might have totally like might have even like had the mindset to like actually like even uh, like uh, like even to like seek the help of like Mihawk, like the person who he was like determined to like fight off eventually and for and defeat like basically Goro even seeking the help of that very same Mihawk to get stronger so that like he could like fully so that like he could like help just like Captain Luffy. Like basically my personal is that definitely even right now with like Zoro having like in the past as well like Zoro having like put his life on the line and was just like just to like save his soul, like all that like that extreme uh desire for and extreme desire to like not let go of his soul, like Zoro that Zoro even right now have he to like represent would be precisely solely due to like Luffy and how much like Zoro would be like definitely genuinely believing that like based on that like Luffy won't be able to like be like the king of the pirates, like Luffy won't be able to like achieve his goal if Zoro doesn't have his soul. It's definitely my personal taste, and this could be especially due to like this, and there would be also the reason from Zoro's side that basically Zoro simply can't give up the throat, like even with like even with like Yori asking Zoro for like Enma, which like definitely even though Yori is like not serious about like asking Enma, like still basically the fact that like Zoro definitely my personal impression Zoro totally prioritized like basically Yori's like emotions and connections to like the sword and even while Zoro deep down would be like totally having affectionate feeling towards Yori, like Zoro definitely would be definitely prioritize like the captain of like the safety of his like entire fire group, which he would be able to like which as for like his part that he in order for Zoro to be able to like do his part, like definitely he needs to like have a sword in order for Zoro to be able to like do this part of like guaranteeing like safety of like the Sohan rule. Zoro definitely needs the source would be one thing Zoro would be definitely aware of. And that definitely would be one factor in like Zoro seeing his life to like always like get back his source. So definitely my preference. But like even way more than that, even way more of like a priority for Zoro than that will be to like that like Zoro would be thinking along the lines that like of like the current mindset that basically in order for Luffy to become like the king of the pirates, Zoro would have to like give everything in each and every single fight. It's definitely my preference, and not for him to be able to like, give it his like absolute everything. He would definitely that Zoro's sword is like something. Swords are something that Zoro should have in his possession if his captain Luffy wants to become like the king of the party. Luffy has to like succeed in like eventually succeed be able to like eventually succeed in like achieving his goal. Like Zoro has to like be able to like give it his everything, and if Zoro has to be able to like give it his everything, Zoro needs his sword by his side. And the different this is like that ultimate priority, like the biggest priority for Zoro. And that's the reason for like Zoro right now, even while have deep down having like genuine affectionate feelings towards Theory, not all even like willing at all to like basically give up his soul, like any of the sword. And I'm going to bring it shouldn't just be like and like Zoro won't be like willing at all to like not even give up. any of the swords to Hiyori or anybody else is definitely my preference. And I'm going to bring like the sword is for like Zoro is even giving up one of his swords to I think to like the land of Wano would be precisely because of like another sword being promised in exchange is definitely like preferable. Solely because like there being a condition of such a manner of like Zoro being able to like get another powerful sword like in exchange for like the current sword of like Zoro uh, uh, might have definitely like so the reason for like Zoro even willing and having given up like at least a single sword of Zoro to like the land of Wano earlier is definitely also my person to remember. Okay, definitely my person to remember right now. Then like, Fury would be like totally wrong right now about like Kaido like sensing part of Oden while Zoro fought against Kaido. And since that way sensing being a Kaido sensing Shenmue would be like totally a wrong conclusion that like Yori might be like come to or like thinking right now. It's definitely my personal reaction. Because like my personal reaction is that like the truth is like Kaido is has been holding on to his like position as like the Emperor of Legacy for a long time. But bring Kaido in his past might have fought of uh, ever since becoming like the Emperor of Three Kaido might have already fought off against like all sorts of exceptionally strong sword fighters in his like journey as Emperor of the Sea Pirates. It's definitely my personal impression. So including Gold Roger as well. So people one among like those great number of sword fighters that so especially from sword fighters that Kaido might have definitely fought in like the past in his life. Definitely my preference with them. Even while I'm considering like Zoro would be only one among them, and definitely I'm considering even while Zoro fought away against Kaido, like Zoro's strength and sword fighting skills would be like nowhere near even comparable to like that of Gold Roger's. Obviously, definitely my preference. Yes, like for Kaido to like precisely remember like Enma, the sword Enma as that belonged to like Oden. About differing it and even Oden as well. When Oden had fought off against Kaido as well, even then like Oden's strength was like absolutely it's not even comparable like to like the Roger's uh strength and sword fighting skills and all that. So like I'm differing for Kaido to like precisely remember like the sword Enma as it having like a connection to modern and all that will be solely due to like my personal impression that like Enma will be like the sword Enma will be having that specific and distinct and different aura about it. It's definitely my personal impression. So like on top of like the sword Enma being extremely difficult for people to like even build like on top of like that like they believe once like someone is able to like build like a sword Enma like there will be that precise distinct or that would be like of the drink would be like produced out of like the soul enma is definitely my favorite. So like when Oden in like the past revealed that enma and fought up against Kaido, it's precise exact distinct aura might have been produced from like the sword enma. It's definitely my favorite. So like the very since and my favorite is that Kaido after like fighting off against like Oden, like the next time Kaido fought off against like Zoro while Zoro was fighting against that Kaido was like Enma, uh, while Zoro was fighting up against Kaido, the very same sword Enma, like I'm definitely Kaido might have definitely not recognized like the sword Enma through its like appearance, but like Kaido might have been able to precisely recognize the sword Enma precisely through that aura production, which might have precisely once again happened precisely with like Zoro being able to like wield Enma. That's definitely my opinion. That might have created like that unique and distinct, once again created like that unique and distinct aura of Enma. So like it will be precisely because of Kaido being able to like sense this like exact distinct aura of like Enma from like the path that he has sent while fighting off against Poland. He was like the precise and sole reason that I was different for like Kaido being able to sense like the sword Enma of Zoro as it belongs to Poland. It's certainly my personal. It might so like my personal impression is short, like my conclusion is that my personal impression is definitely that like the sword Enma belongs to Poland will have like absolutely no relevance of story. It will be all the reason for Kaido being able to recognize Enma is only due to that aura that it is produced from the sword Enma whenever it's used by someone who's able to like who's capable of handling that sword. Definitely my positive temperature. So like that would be like the sole factor that might have allowed Kaido to be able to like recognize the sword and knife. Definitely my good friend. So like definitely I'm considering impressions that like back in like the past when modern bearded and my like even then I'm considering modern might have definitely not at all been able to like unlock the true potential and the true exceptional and intense power that would be like lying hidden within like the sword and definitely my perspective. Like even Odin might have been only been able to like even Odin, during Odin's prime like I'm during Odin might have only been able to like unlock even back when like about when Odin fought off against Kaido using Emma, like even then like I'm also Odin might have only been able to unlock just only a fraction of like the true potential that would be lying hidden within like the sword and definitely when those frame and that would be around like the kind of like a similar situation with like Zoro as well when Zoro had fought up against Kaido as well. It's definitely my good friend. So like I'm also eventually in like the very distant future I'm also Zoro finally being able to like unlock the true full potential of Enma. And it's like the distant future scenario that I'm also and at that point I was bring Zoro with that absolute full potential of Enman considering Zoro probably reaching like the levels of strength that would be like probably either equivalent to that of like Gold Brother or like Zoro reaching the levels of strength that would be like even surpassing that of Gold Brother. It's also definitely an eventual possible distant future scenario of like a possible and Zoro and my possible so that definitely not the impression right now that like Zoro should be right now mainly assuming that basically that Oden had mastered like Enma back when Oden did that yeah Enma is definitely my decision. Zoro would be like totally naively assuming that his chapter of the thing would be like eventually in the consistency of Zoro would be slowly realizing that basically that like Oden hadn't even not only not mastered like sword and monk but like hadn't even unlocked not even a fraction of the full potential and power lying within like the sword and monk is something that I'm preparing for Zoro to like shockingly realizing that and find out in like the very distant future. It's definitely my personal ambition that I'm thinking also. And also my personal ambition that like there's a reason for my personal theory ambitions that like if according to my personal ambition something like if Black Odin had when Odin had fought off against Kaido in like the past had Odin actually truly mastered, completely mastered Enma, then I'm personally predicting that Odin could have that the power would be so extreme at that point that like Odin might have been able to like instantly take Kaido's life or like instantly might have pushed Kaido to have no other choice but to like straight away bring out Kaido's like ultimate strongest man beast form. It's definitely my personal reason. But like since like in like the past Odin versus Kaido fight, like Kaido had only since like I don't might have definitely not even felt like the need to even bring out his like man these forms since that back then like I don't have only fought off against Odin his like giant dragon form. That itself would be precisely because of like Odin not even being that of like match at all towards like Kaido possibly being the actuality of that like power level gap between like Odin and Kaido back then during that fight. It's definitely my very much so like in my personal impression that like if that old woman from like the Kurosumi clan hadn't like interfered into that fight between like Konan and Kaido. Like eventually Kaido might have brought out his, like the scenario that I was referring is that like what might have happened might have been like eventually Kaido possibly like either bring out the true strength of his like giant dragon form or like Kaido eventually bringing out his like man beast form which like Kaido would have totally crushed and defeated Oden and taken the life of Oden might have been like the scenario that might have happened. It's definitely my personal impression. So like my personal impression is that like since like Oden in like the past when Oden had basically fought off against like Whitebeard, like Oden basically stood absolutely no chance at all against like the overwhelming superior strength of Whitebeard. And it is like Whitebeard was like an extra rock spire that is Kaido as well. Was like an extra rock spire. Now considering like the power level gap between like Kaido and Whitebeard, even while Whitebeard, until like the point when Whitebeard died, like even until then, like Whitebeard remained like the strongest person in like the world, the strongest person or like strongest fire in like the world. Like I'm considering definitely so like even then like I'm considering like Kaido's like strength might have been only just a tad bit lower than that of Whitebeard. It's definitely my personal reality. So like compared to like Xbox pirate members like with exceptional strength like Whitebeard and Kaido. especially since like against like Whitebeard, like Orwell strength Oden had basically when Oden in like the past has fought off against Whitebeard, like Oden had basically stood absolutely no chance at all. And for the thing like in like the past when like Oden had fought off against Kaido, who was also like an Xbox pirate, like definitely Kaido might have only took out only like the very fraction of his Kaido's pro strength in like when Kaido had fought off against Oden. Definitely my personal impression that, and that would definitely be like the precise reason for like Kaido not bringing out with like man ultimate strongest like man beast form power form in his like fight against Oden. Would be precisely because of that reason. That's definitely my personal impression. So like my personal impression is definitely that it wouldn't just be like the retainers of Oden who are like basically obsessed with like Oden alone that would be like things that basically Oden was so exceptionally strong and even stronger than Kaido and could have actually defeated Kaido if Kaido and Orochi hadn't like cheated their way into like defeating and taking the life of Oden. Would be along the lines I'm considering not just like Oden's retainers alone would be like falsely believing, which I'm considering would be a false belief, and I'm considering like it will just be like Oden's retainers alone that would be falsely believing that, but like I'm considering even the Straw Hat through like Luffy as well as like the Straw Hat crew as well could be like falsely thinking that like Oden was even Zoro as well right now with like Oren. Zoro being extremely impressed and even thinking that Oden has basically mastered like the Enma, which definitely won't be true. It's also the universe of everybody. So like even not just the retainers, but even like the Straw Hat Pirates and even like Sendar kept like the land of Ano as well. People in like the land of Ano as well. I'm considering would be like falsely thinking that basically the sole reason for like Oden losing to like Kaido and Orochi might have been solely due to like the Kaido and Orochi cheating their way into like defeating and taking the life of Oden. Then in actuality, like Kaido who's like an X-Rocks member, like would be far exceptionally superiorly stronger than Oden, and Oden might have definitely not stood a chance against Kaido in actuality, even if that Kurosumi plan old woman hadn't like interfered into like the Kaido or an fight. It's definitely my personal impression. That might definitely be the actuality of like the situation and the truth. It's definitely my personal impression. So that definitely my personal impression right now as for like why exactly so desperately want like plain black clothes, lots and lots of it. And considering like the precise reason would be for like each of like the and I'm considering to be due to like Luffy's decision, like captain of like the Straw Hat Crew, Luffy's decision as like the captain of like the Straw Hat Crew, like Luffy might have decided that like the entire fleet of like his like Straw Hat Crew members has to wear plain black clothes and go up to the precise location like the land of Anno where I'm considering like a graveyard, a huge graveyard might have been built after like the war in Onigashima. A huge graveyard might have probably been built to like where like the bodies of like uh, where like everyone all the heroes of like the hero warriors of like the land of Mano who died fighting to like fight freedom for like the land of Mano in like the war in Onigashima for each of like the and I'm like each of like those positive warriors too and their offspring like really that died fighting for like the freedom of like the land of Mano might have all been like buried in that size huge graveyard. It's definitely my favorite. So like I'm going to bring Yuffie might have told the decision to like Sprocket Crew so that basically they all need to like wear plain black clothes and go up through that graveyard and pay respect to all of those heroes of like the land of Mana who uh, died uh, died for their family as not only just for their family for like but also to like by like the freedom of like the entire like the land of Mana. They're like even fighting for that freedom of like the land of Mana even to their very last breath. Like all those heroes of like the land of Mana who like acted in like the those heroes in unlike Tosuke he faced like their tears and basically went up to like the war in Onigashima even though like their probability of winning the war were like the odds were extremely against them of like their total number of like the samurai and ninja and pirate alliance itself like collectively being like far lesser when compared to like these pirates like army numbers yet like with the odd things also against them like still them giving it their absolute everything and risking their life and fighting in their war and ending up dying in that war. Like those heroes should pay respect for those specific heroes would be like the precise reason for like I'm considering like Usopp would be asking for that plain black clothes. Certainly my personal it should be like officially the straw hat pirate crew like paying respects to like specifically those heroes who had died in like the war and that must definitely my personal impression. So like definitely my personal impression right now as for like the girl whom Sanji had saved from Queen in like the war and Orgasima right now coming to like meet Sanji like right now I'm considering like maybe without much great delay I'm also pretty like maybe I'm considering one possibility like for like maybe it being like precisely as like Sanji would be like shortly like joyfully would be like talking to uh that precise woman. At that point I'm considering maybe for like especially with, like putting to like so precisely because of like the big vampires having shown up to like the land of Wano initially. Considering like maybe like definitely like the big vampire would be definitely present within like still would be present within like the land of Wano. So like I'm considering putting precisely coincidentally seeing Sanji at that point. So, okay, or like I'm considering putting my teeth desperately searching for like Sanji all throughout like the land of Wano and coincidentally putting precisely finding Sanji, but like the moment shooting would be like finding and seeing Sanji, like at that point, like putting seeing like Sanji and like joyfully interacting with like this girl and the different shooting getting jealous and just like kind of like announce in like announce that manner. It's like announce the scenario that I'm delivering right now and my personal and definitely my impression that like this is like the vampire had uh, came with their ship into like the land of Wano initially before like the war and all, yeah, just before like the war and all, yeah, considering like before the straw hat pirates would be before like straw hat pirates would be like leaving like the land of Wano, definitely something like before that definitely Sanji getting that extremely shocking, unexpected like visitor through the like showing up out of the blue and Sanji totally being absolutely shocked at that sight of the thing. It's like the scenario that I'm going to remembering and I'm definitely praying that to happen before like the flow has through would be like leaving with the random kind of like the scenario that I'm going to think and my person game. So like definitely my person I'm concerned right now as for like Tianmon's wife Otoro right now like tearing up and crying like on seeing like basically Otama like praying before having like the red bean too. Like I'm just praying like it will be precisely because of that act of like Otama praying and thanking for like the food might have triggered like the memories within like Otsuru at that point might have like reminded Otsuru of like basically like the days before like the land of Ano had got its freedom. Like when like Otama I think had basically shown up to that such exact spot and like precisely exactly Otsuru had I think had basically offered like the red bean to not offered but like had forced Otama to like have the red bean to because like Otsuru knowing that Otama was that much extremely hungry and like back then, like seeing the fact that like I think like Otsuru had even teared up and cried back then as well when Otama was like hungrily like eating like the red bean soup back then. But like I'm also trying like the difference between like Otsuru's tears back then compared to Otsuru's tears right now would be like back then Otsuru's tears on seeing like Otama eating the red bean soup might have been like there are just tears of sadness due to like the uh, due to like Otsuru possibly thinking that like of like the fate of like the children of like the land of honor due to like Orochi's role when compared to right now with like the land of Mano finally having gained its freedom. Right now, as like Otsuru is right now seeing like Otama sitting on that very exact same spot, like praying and thanking for like food that might have instantly triggered the memories within Otsuru. And right now, Otsuru might be comparing that, uh, might be like comparing and realizing that as to like how right now in like the present as to like how like with all the children of like with like the land of Pano gaining its freedom, like all the children of like the land of Pano will be able to like finally have the bright future. So basically right now like the tears of Kosuro right now as she sees like Otama in like the present having like the red beam so would be like tears of joy and tears of that absolute relief is definitely my commentary and version. Yeah, so like definitely know the reimbursement right now with like Otama right now feeling kind of like feels sad due to like Otama knowing that basically the government's delay like Otama was just having to like say goodbye to some big pro Luffy. She loves so much like I'm also bringing like right now Luffy like totally turn things around that I'm also bringing like actually like how Luffy will be turning it around will be having like a kind of a similarity to like how Luffy turned things around in like the past with like Labon is definitely my best friend in like and I was remembering like back when Luffy had like heard the story of Labon like Luffy might have been instant that basically Labon was almost fully losing its hope. Definitely my personal impression. So Luffy might have strengthened up Labon's hope by turning things around and like giving Labon something new, totally new to like look forward to and like Luffy making the promise that he will return one day. Uh, it's definitely my along the lines. It's definitely my preference that that would be totally Luffy, and I'm going to bring a similar thing, kind of like a bit of similarity with right now as to like how I'm going to bring it for Luffy turning things around, Luffy turning things around with Otama as well. Where like I'm going to bring Luffy right now, I'm going to bring to tell Otama that basically uh, for Otama to like get strong a be and for her to be a strong Kunoichi ninja so that like she could like eventually join like the Straw Hat Pirate group. And I'm considering definitely for like Luffy to like not be like just kidding about that. I'm considering like Luffy would be totally and absolutely genuine about like what his like promise that he made in like the past to like Lebon. This will be genuinely intending on like after finding like the one she's like meeting Lebon is definitely my favorite thing. Even if like Luffy hasn't met Pro at all. Still, my birth remembers that Luffy would have definitely no would never forget about Levin still. And Luffy after like the One Piece would like definitely they like absolute depth in his power to like make it back to like uh Lepon and meet Lepon again. It's definitely my birth remembers. So like I'm going to bring in such a similar manner. I'm going to bring like children right now. I'm going to bring while I'm going to bring like Luffy to tell Otama that most likely tell Otama that like for Otama to like giving Otama as well kind of like a something like strong to like look forward to that absolute hope for Otama to like get strong and be a strong ninja so that like Otama could like join like the strong pirates. Even that absolute hope to like Otama would be how I'm going to bring like Luffy would be like leaving the land of Manos. Definitely my favorite. So like that as well I'm going to bring like Luffy would be like totally serious about it, like about like seriously accepting Otama into like the strong pirates once like Otama become a strong ninja. That as well is example the he would be like absolutely confident in Otama that like that Otama will one day definitely become like a strong, exceptionally strong ninja. Will be would work hard and like would one day become an exceptionally strong ninja. And at that point, like Luffy will be genuinely intending even right now. While I'm considering Luffy making that promise to Otama, I'm considering Luffy will be like absolutely genuine about it that like of like basically wanting Otama of like basically accepting for Otama to like this pro hat pro at that point. It's definitely also my open theory and production. So like definitely my open theory and production is definitely also that like in like certain future I'm definitely prepping for like even after like Luffy and the pro hat pro they're right now saying goodbye to like Otama and will be like leaving the land of Wano. I'm considering still in like certain future I'm considering not only Momonosuke and Luffy reuniting but like definitely I'm considering like Otama as well, like seeing Luffy again, like the distant future. And I'm going to bring certainly also for like in like the distant future, like I'm going to bring like Otama training extra hard with that absolute hope of being able to like join the Straw Hat Crew. I'm considering Otama training extra hard and Otama definitely eventually growing up and eventually becoming an exceptionally strong ninja. It's definitely my motivation. And I'm definitely bringing like Shinobu would definitely be I'm considering definitely still I'm totally bringing still thinking to myself the revolution that like Raizo and Shinobu would be most likely getting married eventually, like the scenario that I'm covering, and I'm covering them totally looking after like Otama at that point. Otama staying with like Raizo as well as like Shinobu at that point. It's like the scenario that I'm covering, and they would be like both Raizo as well as like Shinobu, both being like cool and strong ninjas. Like I'm covering both Raizo as well as like Shinobu would be like seriously facing all the each and every single one of like the ninja skills and everything about being a ninja to precisely Otama with that absolute dedication and determination and also intent, teaching all the ninja skills that they know and the ninja powers and everything ninja tricks and everything they know to Otama. And like that way, like Otama, and with like Otama as well, with like and with that absolute determination and putting in all that hard work and also bring Otama in like the distant future, becoming an exceptional ninja that will be like far stronger than even Rise of as well as like Shinobu combined is like the scenario that I was looking for like the very distant future. And I'm also bringing in like the very distant future, I'm also bringing like while Luffy and the Straw Hat Crew and also bringing to be fighting in like a huge war. Like at that point, I'm also bringing in that huge war, like I'm also bringing Momonosuke as well, would be fighting alongside Luffy's and like the Straw Hat Crew side. And I'm also bringing that war. And I'm also bringing like, it will just be like Luffy and the Straw Hat Crew. There will be like other allies as well. Besides Luffy whom I'm considering like maybe like there will be like allies that like Luffy had made towards the end of the Rosa, them as well. I'm considering possibly being present in like that large scale war that I'm considering eventually to happen in like the very distant future. And in that war, I'm considering definitely for like Otama to be totally fighting alongside like Luffy and the Straw Hat Crew in that war. It's also definitely my personal impression as like an exceptionally strong ninja. It's definitely my personal impression. So like I'm considering, but like the other scenario that I'm considering is like even though like Otama will be fighting alongside Luffy, and so I'm definitely considering like Otama to also survive that war. But like I'm considering by then like Otama's like mindset would have like that shift, a kind of like a shift, and Otama would be like by then will be grown so fond of her like land of Wano and of like Raizo as well as like Shinobu that I'm considering even though Otama would definitely generally have that absolute deep affection towards like Luffy. I'm also bringing like Otama's still by then like I'm also bring Otama's like decisions. There will be like I'm also bring a slight of change in like Otama's like decisions and like Otama at that point, even though Otama from Luffy's point of view, Luffy will be totally at that point thinking Otama's like saying absolutely qualified to like join the Straw Hat Crew. And even though Luffy will be like keeping his promise and will be like telling Otama that basically to join like the Straw Hat Crew about to bring like Osama at that point in the countries of telling Luffy no that basically because and there will be some sort of like a justifiable and valid reason for like Osama to like not want like to join the Stock Expo and about to bring it might have to do with like maybe that's like Otama growing up with like Shinobu and Raizo being like during the scenario that I'm about to bring like Otama being like so close to like both Shinobu as well as Raizo. Possibly Otama seeing like Shinobu, eventually seeing like Shinobu and Raizo as her parents, and basically even Shinobu as well as Raizo, even totally like accepting Otama like and as seeing Otama as like their daughter and basically that way like a family kind of like a bond happening between them and so like Otama wanting to like stay in like the land of Wano with like Raizo and live with like Raizo and like Shinobu and so like basically that possibly being one possible reason for like I'm also bringing the distance with the for Otama basically telling Luffy that basically no she wants to go back to like the land of Wano. It's like to which like definitely I'm also bringing Luffy will be like totally okay with this as well. Luffy will be perfectly able to like understand as well. That's for like Otama situation and everything. It's like this much is like a scenario that I'm looking for like a very distant future. Also the film is very interesting right now as like Luffy is like walking away from like Otama. Like Otama right now shouting out to like Luffy saying thank you and like has to like start promising Luffy that she will get stronger and basically all that. Like basically even while Otama is saying all this, like the fact that like even though Luffy is like walking away, the fact that like Luffy doesn't turn back and look at doesn't look at Otama would be precisely that was the impression that it is precisely because of like Luffy by now totally seeing like Otama has like his own sister. It's definitely not unfavorable. Exactly like how Ace as well as Sabo's Luffy sees like Ace as well as Sabo has his own brother even though they are not like blood related brothers of Luffy. Yet like that extreme bond that Luffy has towards like Sabo and affection that Luffy has towards like Sabo and to the point like Luffy genuinely sees them as like own brothers. Like I'm considering by now Luffy would be like genuinely seeing like Otama as well as his like own little sister. So like I'm considering like passing days would be extremely hard, not just only for like Otama, but also for like Luffy as well. And this would be the precise reason for like Luffy not turning back and basically not looking at Otama as like shouting out all this to like Luffy as like Luffy is walking away is definitely my personal emotion. Because like exactly like how it's like extremely hard for Otama and considering it will be extremely hard for Luffy as well, and Luffy as well will be like totally getting emotional right now. It's definitely my personal emotion, which like Luffy wouldn't want, which would be like the last thing that Luffy would want Otama to see. So definitely my personal emotion, and hence why like Luffy would be right now not turning back and looking at Otama and it's like walking away while raising his arm at like just for Otama to let's see. It's definitely without turning his face. It's definitely my personal reaction. So like definitely my personal reaction right now with like the person like a Luffy and like go ahead through like basically about to leave the just about right now about to leave the land of Mana. Still Luffy speaking to his distant to like not to not say goodbye to like moment of Kinemon, and especially because of like Luffy not wanting like the just remember very much remember the bit of the Luffy not wanting like the people of the land of Kano to like find out through moment of scare like thanking Luffy that basically that Luffy was like the one who saved like the land of Kano. So I remember very much that I'm sitting on and since like in a moment like always beside moment of scare, always by moment of scare, right? Like basically this would be like the reason for like Luffy not saying deciding not to say goodbye to like in a moment. Well, definitely remember the name. So like right now with like Usopp precisely asking for a plain black cloth. Like I'm considering this would be what like I'm considering would be precisely according to like Luffy's decision to precisely in a remote manner and in a symbolistic kind of like a manner for Luffy and the Straw Hat Crew to say their goodbye to like Momonosuke and Kinemon would be like Luffy's plan. It's like my personal impression. The status of plan right now is definitely my personal impression. So like I'm considering like a similarity of like a situation that I'm considering right now to like when like the Sword crew had left like the kingdom of Alabasta in like Jurassic Park and basically had basically showed their raised their arms with like the X on their arms as like the sign of like the friendship to like the arms of the just that being like the how like the Straw Hat Pirates like telling their good indirect kind of like a goodbye to the I'm considering right now for like this as well being like this as well being like kind of like a similar situation I'm considering uh, is what I'm considering. And so like I'm considering like the goodbye as well to Momonosuke and Kinemon definitely happening. But like in that kind of indirect and a similar manner, kind of like to that of like how the Sohei parents have told their goodbye to these like the scenario that I'm considering right now. So like I'm considering so that like the Sohei through like Luffy and then Sohei through like setting sail right from like and taking off the thousand journey would be like taking off from like the beach of like the land of Wano. At that point itself, I'm preparing for most likely is of like using it like slingshot, like sending this like precise black claw precisely and it's like this of like exceptional aim like I'm preparing like that black claw precisely landing on like maybe even passing through like the window even breaking through like the window of like the palace of like Momonosuke. And it could be like I'm preparing it could be in like Momonosuke's even precise room within like the palace that I'm preparing precisely this like black cloth will be like being shorted towards by Usopp. It's definitely my preference. And what we would be like let's say written in and I'm preparing like within that black cloth like I'm preparing like Luffy and the Luffy would have written his like goodbye to like Momonosuke and I'm preparing it won't be like Luffy at that point. I'm preparing by then I'm preparing like once like the Usopp would be like going up to like the house running with the black cloth like at that point I'm preparing Luffy and Usopp like revealing their idea and strategy to like stealthily tell their goodbye to Momonosuke. And I was preparing that with that, like I was preparing each of the Straw Hat crew members, including the Yamato, I was preparing like writing their farewell and goodbye on that black cloth and basically uh, onto that black cloth and basically like for precisely for like Momonosuke and Kinemon. Their farewell for precisely Momonosuke and Kinemon onto that writing or that is onto that black cloth and so precisely slingshotting that black cloth and that black cloth precisely landing on like precisely where like Momonosuke would be within that palace, which would be precisely like the main room of like Momonosuke within that palace and right there and right in front of like Momonosuke's table, which where I'm considering like this of game would be like so exceptional that like it would be precisely that black cloth I'm considering right now. Maybe totally like even passing through like the window of like the palace and landing right on like the table where like Momonosuke will be like only sitting in like his like palace. Uh, in his like Shogun Palace. It's like the scenario that I'm also delivering and my and that way like and I'm also bring at that point Kinemon as well would be beside moment. So like at that point like seeing like their goodbye through like what all the seeing their goodbye through like the black through through what would be like returning like that black through like under the brain. Both Momonosuke as well as Kinemon like kind of like being in tears like even Kinemon as well too would be like totally maybe even would be like struggling so hard not to cry like after children still in a mono spell would be totally crying as well as like moment of here as well as like even moment of like both of them totally tearing up the like the scenario that I was depicting and my question to you and question. So like the film brand right now as like the storage crew are like using like the land of Anno right now for like Luffy to even say that like don't worry, Momonosuke will come. Like I'm considering like Luffy won't be at all. My consideration is that but through that dialogue Luffy won't be even referring to it at all about like the present certainly my favorite about like Momonosuke actually coming towards like the shorelines and basically actually waving his like goodbye to like the Frohad Spire to us like they are leaving this land of Manos. That won't be at all what like Luffy will be referring to. It's definitely my impression. Like what Luffy would be like referring to through that dialogue would be precisely that like eventually exactly like how Luffy would be like totally often comparing himself to that Ford Roger. Like if Luffy would be getting that feeling like there will be always that comparison possibly happening within Luffy to like himself to like Ford Roger or Never Brave. And then the Luffy would be that having that extreme border the gap of border might have totally impressed like and fascinated lately. The fact that Pink alone was able to like find like the One Piece. Basically, that might have been like something that Luffy might have seen that totally it fascinated Luffy and basically might have totally impressed Luffy that basically like that basically might also remember that like especially like precisely moment of his father Oden had basically had eventually ended up being precisely ended up especially being beside Gold Roger, like the king of the pirates, when he especially became like the king of the pirates and found like the One Piece. And so the Luffy will be totally betting it all on like the exact same thing happening for Luffy as well. It's like eventually by the time Luffy would be finally making it to like the One Piece, by then like precisely definitely eventually somehow Momonosuke would be ending up precisely being the side like exactly like Oden like Momonosuke as well. Eventually ending up precisely being the side Luffy while even if like Romanovsky is like the shogun of like the land, but even then, exactly like how it happened with like Roger, with like Oden being by Roger's side, then Roger had found like the one piece like this is really totally betting on that exactly to like that for like it's free to like repeat itself and basically by that for like those who will be having that actual firm confidence that like he will eventually definitely find like the one piece and by the time like he would be finding like the One Piece definitely for his free to like repeat itself and Momonosuke get to like eventually ending up probably coming looking for like Luffy and being that way ending up being beside Luffy. Precisely by the time Luffy would be like finding like the One Piece would be that absolute confidence and like that feeling that Luffy would be strongly feeling and that would be what precisely Luffy would be right now meaning about that will be trying to say hinting at through like the dialogue that like the viewing saying through like the dialogue that we don't worry he will come. It's definitely my personal impression. But like I'm just saying my personal impression that like and also my personal impression that even though Yamato so desperately wants to be Oden, like definitely from Luffy's point of view, my personal impression that like since from everything Luffy has heard of Oden, like definitely my personal impression that like Luffy after like totally understanding Yamato, like about the ring, Luffy might have definitely not at all been even though Yamato so desperately wants to be Oden and so desperate to want to be Oden, like Luffy from Luffy's point of view, Luffy might have definitely not at all been able to see uh, any sort of like similarity between like Oden and Yamato at all. It's definitely my perspective. Other than Yamato badly wanting to be Oden, like Luffy might have definitely not at all been able to see an Oden in Yamato. It's definitely my perspective. But like in the case of Momonosuke, definitely Luffy might have definitely felt had that feeling that multiple times that like Luffy might have felt like an Oden within like Momonosuke. That basically that would be also what like Luffy would be like right now even thinking with like Luffy thinking of how like initially Momonosuke was like extremely scared And that very moment of scale, like that extreme drastic change that moment of scale right now have through like this like whole through the whole Luffy and Momonosuke's adventure together, ending up in like the war in Onigashima. By the time like the war became over and like the land of Wano got its freedom, like by then like the drastic change that happened to Momonosuke with like Momonosuke right now being a whole different person with that absolute extreme confidence and growth. And considering definitely right now, Luffy will be like totally seeing a lot of Oden in Momonosuke that like Luffy will be totally having that firm belief that like even though Momonosuke is like the token of like the land of Wano, that Oden within Momonosuke will be totally eventually pushing Momonosuke, even if temporarily would be like totally, it's like Oden even if temporarily would be still eventually pushing Momonosuke out of like the land of Wano with like Momonosuke the ordinary moment of scale eventually like finding like Luffy and that way moment of eventually coming to Luffy would be that absolute confidence and belief, firm belief that Luffy would be having and that would be exactly what Luffy would be like totally trying to mean through that it's like side of that don't worry he will come. This definitely my book very much.